Philippine Constitution. Question number 1. Discussion. Discuss the originality of the Malolos Constitution. It is the only constitution ever framed by Filipinos, taking its name from the capital of the Filipino regional government. The Malolos Constitution is the first important Filipino document ever produced by the people representatives. It is anchored in democratic traditions that ultimately had their roots in American soil. It created a Filipino state whose government was popular, representative, and responsible, with 3 distinct branches: the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. The Constitution specifically provided for safeguards against abuses and enumerated the national and individual rights not only of the Filipinos and of the aliens. Discuss the legislative in terms of office, power, composition, and manner of creation. First, office. The office in terms of legislative is representative shall be chosen for a term of 2 years, except to fill a vacancy. Senators be chosen for a term of 4 years, except to fill a vacancy, and except there shall be an entire election of all the senators at the first election of representative after each new legislative apportionment. Second, power. The power in terms of legislative is including both the House of Senate is given extensive powers by the Constitution. The legislative branch is the only branch that can create laws or change existing laws. Question number 2. Why Mabini was not in favor of Aguinaldo signing the drafted constitution of the member of the Malolos Congress? Because he believes that there is no legal right to adopt a constitution because it was not a constituent assembly, nor could it enact laws as it did not have any legislative powers. And he added that it was not the right time for framing a constitution because the Philippine independence has not yet been recognized. Number 3, composition. The composition in terms of legislative in composition is each legislative district shall be divided into 2 representative districts. In 1982 and every 2 years, thereafter, 1 representative shall be elected from each representative district for a term of 2 years. Last one is manner of creation. The legislative in terms of manner of creation is every system needs checks and balances, and the legislative system is no exemption. One houses may have passed legislation too quickly. Both the Senate and the Houses of Commons must approve bills separately in order for them to become law. Question number 4. Discuss the executive in terms of office, power, composition, and manner of creation. First, in office, no vice president was provided for in case of vacancy and other in the office of executive. A president was to be selected by the Constituent Assembly. The prerogatives of the office in the meantime being exercised by Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Second one is power. The President is responsible for implementing and enforcing the laws written by Congress and to to that end, appoints the heads of the federal agency, including the cabinet. The Vice President arrives and also the command of the Army and the Navy, and the right to dissolve the Assembly, to send messages to the Legislative, to appoint the Secretaries of the Government, to grant pardons, and to have control over diplomatic and commercial relations with other states. Next, letter C, composition. The function of the executive department were to be performed by the council of the government composed of president and 7 secretaries. The several portfolios were foreign affairs, interior, finance, war, and Navy public instruction, public communication, and work, and agriculture, industry, and commerce. Last, letter D, manner of creation. The secretaries were made jointly responsible, the Assembly, for the general policy of the government, and individually responsible for their personal acts. An important duty of a cabinet was that of annually presenting. Question number 5, create a diagram showing how the executive and legislative is from leading the people as the starting point. The legislative power was vested in a unicameral body called the Assembly of the Representatives, while the executive power was vested in the President of the Republic. Among the powers, the legislative has right to select its own officers, and the right of censure and interpellation, and the right of impeaching the President, cabinet member, and the Chief Justice. And for the executive, they have the rights to initiate the law of command of the Army and Navy, and the right to dissolve the Assembly.
Good afternoon. I am Janelle Buenviaje, and I'm here to discuss the Philippine 1978. Question number 1. Discuss the power disparity between the executive and legislative. Answer. The executive, which is Marcos, has limited power, although it's under the martial law. The IBP, or the legislative wing, has a broader power. Marcos may have the power to do something because he is the president. However, the IBP can repel whatever decision the president has to make. Question number 2. Discuss the power arrangement between the IBP and Marcos with regard to the creation of law. Answer. The IBP will then legislate within limits set by and on matters determined or approved by Marcos. But the IBP was still the arbiter of the succession. That made Marcos having limited opposition in the IBP.
Lois Meneses from DSHRM 4A. I'm going to discuss about the Malolos Constitution. Question number 1. Discuss the originality of the Malolos Constitution. The originality of the Malolos Constitution is that it was the only constitution ever framed by the Filipinos. It was presented in the form of dictatorship by Aguinaldo's proclamation of May 24, 1898. Question number 2. Why Mabini was not in favor of Aguinaldo signing the drafted constitution of the members of the Malolos Congress? Mabini was not in favor of the signing of the drafted constitution because he said that it was not a constituent assembly, nor could it enact laws, as it did not have any legislative powers, and it's obtaining the necessary funds for the maintenance of the same. Moreover, he added that it was not the right time for framing a constitution, as the Philippine independence had not yet been recognized. Question number 3. The legislative in terms of office. The assembly was to meet annually for a period of time, at least 3 months. Power. They have the power to pass a law. It has the right to select its own officers, the right of censure and interpellations, and the right of impeaching the President, the Cabinet members, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and the Solicitor General. Composition. The legislative is composed of secretaries of the government given seats in the Assembly. Manner of creation. It was vested in a unicameral body called the Assembly of Representatives. The members were to be elected according to the law of terms of 4 years. Question number 4. The executive in terms of office. Of power. Among the powers granted to the President were the initiation of laws, the veto power, the command of the Army and Navy, the right to dissolve the Assembly, to send messages to the legislature, to appoint the secretaries of the government, to grant pardons, and to have control over diplomatic and commercial relations with other states. Composition. Performed by the Council of the Government, composed of the President and 7 secretaries. Manner of creation. They were made jointly responsible to the Assembly for the general policy of the government and individually responsible for their personal acts.
Good afternoon. I am Janelle Buenviaje and I'm here to discuss the Philippine 1970. Question number 1. Discuss the power disparity between the executive and legislative. Answer. The executive, which is Marcos, has limited power, although it's under the martial law. The IBP, or the legislative wing, has a broader power. Marcos may have the power to do something because he is the president. However, the IBP can repel whatever decision the president has to make. Question number 2. Discuss the power arrangement between the IBP and Marcos with regard to the creation of law. Answer. The IBP will then legislate within limits set by and on matters determined or approved by Marcos. But the IBP was still the arbiter of the succession. That made Marcos having limited opposition in the IBP.
I'm Ian Kevin Pico from HRM 4A. Question number 2. Discuss the power arrangement between the IBP and Marcos with regard to the creation of Law 134. Answer. The power arrangement between the IBP and Marcos with regard to the creation of law is the IBP was convened in a new parliament building in Quezon City on June 12, Independence Day. As Marcos tuned legislative duties over to the assemblymen, he reminded them that he still retained decree power but said he hoped not to have to use them.